I'm Janice Hostegger. After 3 decades in the marketing business and many years of being an entrepreneur, I've learned a thing or two about marketing. Join me as we talk about marketing, small business, and life in between. Welcome to My Weekly Marketing.
One thing I've noticed since I first started in business is this. Women and men relate to each other and market themselves differently. Now, I'm speaking in generalizations here. Don't send me any emails, but I've noticed that women tend to be more relational, verbal, and generally relate to each other differently than men do. That's why I love what my guest has to say today. Today, I'm joined by Cara Chatellier, founder of Bubbly Creative, a boutique agency that helps women-led service businesses show up like big brands. What started as a solo freelance gig in Madrid for Cara has grown into a full-service agency with an all-female team and a reputation for making marketing feel doable. In this episode, we're talking about what it really takes to build a brand that connects without burning out or pretending to be someone you're not. Cara shows how she blends strategy with soul and how small businesses can stand out by leaning into their voice, their values, and their vision. If you've ever wondered how to market your business in a way that actually feels like you, with personality, purpose, and a little bit of sparkle, you're in for a treat. Here's my conversation with Cara. Hey, Cara, welcome to My Weekly Marketing.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I love that you run an agency, Bubbly Creative. I also love that name, by the way, that focuses on women-led brands. How did you get to that point? Like, what made you want to focus on that or have that be your agency's focus?
Yeah, well, first, the name Bubbly Creative, just to touch on that quickly, I've been told my whole life that I was bubbly. My mom always said effervescent, which is such a great word too, especially if you're a marketer, you hear a word like effervescent, you're like, delicious.
I'm going to own that one.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so it worked out perfectly because, bubbles, they pop, rise to the top. It's kind of like a celebration. Anytime you have bubbly, it's like fun. So I was like, yes, love it. But as far as working with women, so I grew up in a family of 3 sisters. I'm the middle. So, and my mom's a very strong woman. When we were younger, she got her master's, worked full time, and just always been a part of like very matriarchal structures that really loved the women around me. I've always had very strong female friendships working. I always had female managers, even, it was just something that I was always drawn to. And as I kind of like came into my own through school, going to university and all of those things, just really kind of like leaned into feminism and all of those things that, learning more about the patriarchy and really just wanting to support other women and help other women's businesses grow. As a female-owned business, you realize these unique struggles that we have as women and the unique powers we have as women. So just really wanted to connect with women who owned their own businesses and help push their messages forward.
Very cool. Do you think that personality, or more like, do you think that personality is such a powerful differentiator in women-led brands, or what part of branding women do you think sets that apart? That's a weird way of asking it, but with this, like, what's different about marketing a woman-led brand? That's kind of what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it totally depends on the individual, right? So everyone's different. All women are different, men, non-binary folks, what have you. But when you're marketing with a women-owned brand, I feel like because we tend to be more nurturing, we tend to be more feeling. We put so much of our heart and soul into business. And especially if it's a business that is targeting a female clientele, you just are able to tap in a little bit more to like the emotion of it. So I find that when I'm working with female-owned businesses, sometimes there's a little bit of a doubt at first that they have, like, I don't know who I am. one of our strengths at Bubbly Creative is helping them find out who they are and really threading, like pulling that out. We ask like a million questions when we get started working with people. And it's like, from what you're saying there, I can sense that you're, and they're like, oh yeah, actually. And like, what do people say about you often? What do you get in your testimonials? And you can like kind of pull out those key pieces. Cause sometimes like as a rule, unfortunately, a lot of women tend to be more susceptible to imposter syndrome. And men also experience it, of course, and non-binary folks. But I think that it's the socialization of us. Like we just tend to feel imposter syndrome a little bit more than men do. And as a result, not always as standing as confident in our brand and who we are. So one of the things we love doing is like pulling that out and kind of like helping people stand strongly in the brand and who they are.
Oh, that is super powerful because I think I know of a lot. I know even for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I grew up knowing what I wanted to do. I've been in business most of my career, but when I took time off to raise kids, I became just a mom in my head. And I started volunteering a lot and doing things that when I went back into the workforce, it felt like, oh, I don't need to be paid that much. Maybe it's just because a lot of times women take on a lot of different roles. We can be the caretaker. We can be the parent, mother. We are most often the one to take time off when we have kids. I don't know. I feel like because we have so many names on ourselves or so many roles that we fill, sometimes I feel like it's really hard for us to identify who we are because we're such a mixed bag. All of us are, right?
Completely. Yeah. And I think a lot of times when I don't have children myself, but a lot of my friends do, and they talk about like, okay, I'm just coming back to myself after like having infants and like, okay, I'm starting to like find my identity again. So I feel like that happens a lot. And then you have children and then you also have this business. So it's like kind of like an identity crisis. So kind of like sorting through all that. And,
Yes.
just by the nature of society and the structures that we live in, having being almost like 90% of the time, the burden of the household falls on women a lot and they're managing and juggling so many things. So it's just, like you said, kind of parsing through that and figuring out who am I? Who am I as a business owner? Who's my target client? Like just being able to help people sort through that bit and having that be our expertise has been really special.
Yeah. I love the phrase, it's a jar can't read its own label. And I think that is something that I think we also have to just be outright and say, what do you see that I do well? Asking people, asking your friends, asking your family, asking clients even, what is it that you're happy about this and getting feedback from them? Because oftentimes I think, especially if I get a compliment, my first thing is just to kind of dismiss it, like, oh, thanks, and then kind of move on. But really taking that in and absorbing that, because that's a clue, that's a mirror, right? So that you can start to see how other people see you and how your brand shows up in other people's businesses. So
Totally. And that's one of the things we do a lot with when we do that first deep dive meeting with our clients is we ask them what's something your clients consistently say about you. And you can also see that in testimonials. Like you'll see this similar phrases keep popping up and you're like, okay, like let's lean into that. Like people keep saying like, oh, I make them feel safe or they feel taken care of, or they say consistency or they say communication. And you're like, okay, so that is going to help us form who you are. And like, because it's what people are saying, it's how you make them feel. And that's like the most important thing about a brand, right?
And I think it's harder if you are not maybe an extroverted person or you don't have a bold personality.
Right.
It's a little harder to figure out. Like sometimes I'll look at my own branding and think, oh, it's I'm kind of vanilla. It's like I don't know what it is that I need to pull out of this. So I love that you go through questions with them. I love that you take them through that, and I think that all of us can benefit from just seeing patterns or just getting feedback from other people.
Totally. Definitely.
So how do you work it? So what's the difference between a personal brand and a business brand when you have a woman-led business? I mean, obviously they're different, but how do you differentiate them?
Yeah. So I think with a personal brand, you're going to be focusing more on the individual, right? So, like, what their personality is like, what their day to day is like. You're able to kind of do that peek behind the curtain that is kind of more their relationships, their likes, their interests. People want to see more of, the a day in the life type of thing. And with a business brand, it's more of a collective. So the owner, founder is definitely important, but what's the team dynamic? How does everyone get along? What's fun about the office space or the clinical space? How do you celebrate each other? How do you interact? What's something like goofy you do? What's something like a little I'm trying to think of like silly little traditions you have for birthdays or holidays. And people love that. Like, it's just something that like personalizes it, right? Because a lot of times, like when you're working with different brands, I know we just talked about like a OBGYN. You need to create a narrative that isn't so clinical. Because a lot of times you're going to, like, if you're a doctor, you're going to lean into your clinical expertise, your medical expertise. But for a layperson, for a patient, they want you to, of course, be expert, but the bedside manner also, it plays a big part in how you're going to interact with your patients. And that is also incredibly important.
It really is. And now, how do you recommend that if you have a small team or your service-based business with maybe a larger team, how do you start building that brand, given that it's not maybe a reflection of you, or should it be a reflection of you if you're the founder?
Yeah, I think it's a reflection of you to some extent. What I typically do is I sit down with like key stakeholders, like the people who are gonna be most involved and most featured in the brand. So let's say it's 5 of the top people, maybe it's 5 partners. Sit down with them, and then you ask a question to the room, and they all kind of play off each other. Actually, no, what about this? Oh, and then this thing, and da da da. And it really helps to get kind of that holistic picture. And even if they say something, but you hear something, you're like, I heard what you said, but what I'm getting is this. And you're able to kind of like thread that needle. I think the founder, the owner, definitely incredibly important. But when you're doing more of a business brand, the interaction and what that culture is like is more important. Because that's what people want to know. That's what's gonna resonate with them. And yeah, also, I think I'm talking about clients that I have that I've worked with. I've also had situations where I've talked to founders, to people where the culture feels not great. And then that doesn't feel like someone I can help market either, because you want to work with someone where you feel like, okay, this is something where the vibes are good, they all get along, this feels really great, and I want to promote this. Because like a lot of times we have to go, and this is another like female intuition thing, we go by our gut, right? With clients, I find a lot like I go by gut feel. This doesn't feel good. I don't like the way this founder is talking to her employees. I feel a little uncomfortable. So then I think that also plays a big part, being sure that you can properly market them because you feel you believe in what they're doing and how they represent themselves.
So I would imagine that the leader, even though you're pulling in a lot of members of the team, the leader really has to be the one to say, this is why we do it. So they need to establish their values, their mission, and all of that. So that's the leader's job, right?
Totally.
And so that has to be sort of the starting point, which I do. When I do branding for people, I'll draw concentric circles, and that's in the center, like your why. Why are you doing this?
Sure.
Do you feel like getting everybody in a room like that and kind of hashing through it, does that at all weaken it at all? Does that like dilute it or take the edge off? Just curious from a branding standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think because typically what happens is I'll have initial phone calls with the founder and maybe one other key stakeholder, but then having individuals in there, I think because people see things. What I did one time actually was I met with the founders, asked them a bunch of questions, and then I met with other key team members separately to get their points of view. And that was also pretty interesting, but everything overlaps. Like, it was like, if you're doing it right, the answers are going to be so similar and everyone's going to feel a similar way about the brand. So I don't find that it dilutes it. I actually feel like it strengthens it if they're doing things the right way.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've worked with brands too that have kind of done a similar thing. I went to the key stakeholders, the C-suite, kind of got everybody's feedback, and they were like night and day. So that was a challenge, and something like that happened. So, but I love that you are working, I think you need to work with that core, that reason why they're there and kind of move out from there. And you're never going to get 100% buy-in probably in any, well, maybe not never, but often there's always some outliers that are going to say, well, I think we should focus on this or that, right? But so are there good women-led brands that you know of that really connect to its purpose, connect their purpose to their marketing really well?
Definitely. So one client that we work with is, well, I'll just tell this whole story. So this is going to be a answer the question and then mini tangent. So it's a OBGYN. It's all female obstetric providers. There's like 60 providers. So big practice. And when I started working with them, they were kind of having a image problem. So they were feeling like, okay, we need more patients. We need to drive more patients in. But something about like the website and our social just isn't working. So I'm looking at their website, looking at their social, and it's like so clinical. And the social is like all stock photos, website, all stock photos. And nowhere there does it say anything about, like, it's all just like stock language too. It's like copy and paste, like Google, like OBGYN language for website. And like, that's what pops up. And I was just like, did a man design this?
Yeah.
And the partner was like, yeah, how did you know? I was like, oh my God, please. So what we did is we went, like, basically their mission, their vision is like they want to build trust and they want to care for women at every stage of their life. So not just when they're delivering their first, second, third, fourth child, but when they're teens and they're having their first pap smear and that's scary, or when they're getting birth control for the first time, or they're dealing with endometriosis or they're going through menopause and they need hormone replacement therapy. It's kind of like the full stretch of life for a woman who needs a provider they can trust. And
Right.
so what we did, and like we were like, your brand is this, like, you want to be trustworthy, you want to like walk with someone through their life and like be a support system. And your website is saying clinical, copy and paste, like this could be anyone. And you're an all-female obstetric provider, you gender affirming care, like you're a safe space for anyone. And like, we're not seeing that anywhere. So we kind of like blew everything up. We've had like multiple photo shoots with them. So we have like, now it's all their beautiful smiling faces. Like, who are these people? Here's like, instead of like doctor profiles where it's like, here's where they went to school, here are their specialties, nothing else. It's like, here's what I do outside of work. You can find me here. Just like personal points about them. We also do highlights on social. Like, here's a quote about what they do, why they love what they do, what they specialize in. So just kind of like creating that trust, helping build that trust, pulling in from testimonials saying, okay, someone always says that this doctor especially, is a great person to go to for X. So let's highlight that. Whereas like if you're coming at this from the male brain, you're like, I don't know, it's a doctor's office. It's fine. What do you mean? Like, we're like, no, you're delivering a baby. Like, that is incredibly vulnerable. Like, you need someone you can trust and like who you feel like gets you and sees you and has been where you are. And like, so that creating that from like a marketing perspective, coming at it with like such care and sensitivity and being like, we really need to like push that not only are these expert doctors, but they also are people and they care and they're worthy of your trust. So like threading that needle is incredibly important.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for something like OBGYN, because you're going in there, you're extremely vulnerable, right? As a woman,
Totally.
you're just going in there and letting them see it all, right? And so therefore you really want to know what they look like. You want to know,
Yes.
that they're human beings, that they understand.
Right. Yes.
So that's awesome. How do you think storytelling comes into play in building a memorable and meaningful brand? How do you integrate that into websites, into email, whatever it is?
Yeah, we use it quite a bit. And luckily, we have some great doctor. Well, keeping the OBGYN example, we have some great doctors who have been able to get some really impactful stories, not only from the providers themselves who deliver at the hospital, but from patients who have delivered and have these really great stories, and like providing those via the blog, features on the website, testimonials. I think like anytime you can tell a personal point, a story, it just resonates so much more. I mean, think about the way we live our lives. Like everything is stories, right? It's storytelling. It's like building that narrative. I know myself, I'm like, always listening to a podcast, always listening to an audio book or something. Like I love a story. And with one of my dental clients, um, we had individuals come in to do video testimonials, which were incredible because you think about, okay, like, yeah, you go to the dentist, whatever. But then there's these people who go to the dentist and they have a missing tooth or they have teeth that they aren't proud of and they don't smile. And if you think about that, that is such a key part of your life, of happiness, of joy, of celebration, where, you show your teeth as a way to say like, oh, I'm happy, I'm here. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's so incredibly impactful to your well-being. So like being able to tell that story, because like I think again, you think about, okay, going to the dentist, don't know, I'm scared, but it's like, what if a dentist can transform your life and make you feel better about yourself and improve your well-being and bring joy back in. And it's something like that where it's like, if you think about things that like if you take things for face value or take things like, okay, yeah, it's a dentist office, whatever, but dig a little deeper and you're able to like pull out these really impactful tales that are like marketing, but also like very human and really impactful.
Tell me more about how you pull out the stories, because I know for a lot of my clients and for me personally, storytelling doesn't come naturally. Like I know people that can tell a story, off their cuff, no problem. But I'm one of those that's like, story, okay. So what do you suggest for people like me and others who kind of struggle with that storytelling way, not just for themselves, but for their clients as well? Like pulling it out from testimonials and such.
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's think about, so I have like a staffing company. So a lot of times like you'll think, okay, yeah, you find someone a job, but really, I think it's like thinking about what the business is, what they do, and then thinking about that impact that it could have. Like finding a job some of the biggest moments of your life are like maybe buying a home, getting married, having a child, getting a new job, like these big life transitions. So like thinking about it from a lens of like, how does the service that this business provides impact someone's life? And like thinking about what's a great client interaction you had? Can you tell me about something that you hear clients say over and over? Can you tell me about something that a client said to you once that really meant a lot to you? And then usually there's a story there. Like, because even thinking about the staffing company, someone said to them, like, someone wrote an email that's like, this job has been transformative because X, Y, and Z. And you're like, okay, dive in, like zoom in. I want more. Tell me more. Let's pull out some threads there. So it's like kind of these outside perspectives, like the testimonial, those emails that you're getting, things people are saying over and over that you can say like, okay, let's pull back a little bit. It's kind of like a zooming in and like just like asking more and more questions. Let me think of another example from like, okay, like financial advisors. Like there's these things where you think baseline, okay, boring. Okay, it's a financial advisor, money, whatever. But it's like, actually, my huge impact because it can, you think about estate planning and wills and how like talking to a financial advisor when someone's going through divorce. Like I have a female-owned, female advisory client, and she specializes in divorce and like how women are often negatively impacted by divorce and like kind of parsing through that. And I think like she's done a ton of like webinars on it, a ton of events, and like thinking about the major impacts that she's had on some of these individuals. And those things where baseline, the business could seem a little like, okay. And even like marketing, like us, we're like, okay, what impact could we have? It's just a marketing company, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, actually, you can grow a business significantly. You can, like we've had clients who've opened new offices and really grown with new hires and increased revenue by a ton. And it's like, yeah, you are impacting people's lives in a major way. So looking at it from that standpoint and just kind of pulling those threads.
I love that. To sort of start from what you do and then looking at the many ways that you touch people's lives through what you do. I love that. That's a great approach. Going back to brand personality. So what platforms or strategies do you use to showcase brand personality, especially for solopreneurs? So let's say that you have a personal brand. Mm-hmm. What is it that a small team should do or a solopreneur should do to really focus on showcasing their personal brand?
Yeah. No. So I think there's a lot of things you can do. I think if you can take a couple hours with your team, whether it's yourself and you could do this with a friend or it's you and a couple of your employees, go offsite, take a couple hours and sit down and talk through like, who are we? Why are we doing this? Why are we here? What are things that matter to us? How do we want people to feel when they interact with our content? What are some words we would use to describe how we want to look and feel? Kind of like going through a deep dive. And I mean, they can look up Google branding questions if you're on a shoestring. I always think like, you can DIY some of this. It might not be as impactful, but you're going to be able to get some great stuff. And sit down and think on that. And then think about the ways that you can present that to the world. And I think a lot of times with like personal brands or small teams, and like I'm guilty of this too, it's hard to show your face. It's really hard to put yourself out there because a lot of times when we have these small businesses, we're showcasing a piece of ourselves that feels really vulnerable. Showcasing expertise, putting yourself out there is terrifying. You want to it's so vulnerable. But it gets easier and you get better at it. And you have to start with something. And you might look back in 5 years and be like, oh my God, remember when I did that? But at least you started. And the only way to do it is by starting. And if you don't have the budget for a photo shoot, just like have some fun doing what you're doing, do some behind the scenes stuff, staying authentic to who you are. And I think authenticity is like really tossed around a lot. But I think, like for me, I am a big personality. I am bold. I'm kind of loud. And like corporate is not for me. I'm not like a corporate person. I'm giggly, and I remember being at a corporate job early on and someone said to me, "You laugh too much." And I'll let you guess, man or woman, do you think said that to me?
I would guess that was a dude that said
It
that
was
one.
a man. Yes, I remember it so specifically. Um, but like things like that where it's like like if I showed up super corporate as like on video, like, talking about metrics and KPIs, like that's just not who I am. And if you're not a bubbly, outgoing person, don't be that. Just like try to showcase who you are and what you're trying to do. And I think we love a photo shoot. So like if you can take a photo shoot to like showcase your brand and what you do, yay. It's obviously an expense, but I think like that's a really fun way to do it. If you're nervous to show up on social, writing down some blogs, some stories about how you got started. Everyone loves a founder story. Have someone interview you, like whether it's a friend or a team member. That's always really fun. And that can pull out some great stories, some quotes you can use on social if you don't want to show yourself. Writing things on LinkedIn. I mean, where your clients are, right? Because this is like broad strokes on like personal brand, who you are. But we usually like to say like focus on 2 platforms. You can't do it all, and nor should you.
Yeah.
And if video is not your thing, post on LinkedIn, post on your blog. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do really recommend, especially if you have a personal brand, to use video because the human mind picks up so much more from video than they will ever pick up from just reading an article. However,
100%.
there are so many people that are uncomfortable putting themselves out there. And so I love that you talk about baby steps. And I think that's important too, just to kind of sit down, first of all, and figure out who you are, how you want to portray yourself, or how you want to look, and figure out that brand piece of it. Because if you don't have that, it does get harder. And then, yeah, like you said, you got to just jump in. How I started was just videotaping myself at home, having a conversation with myself, and recording myself doing it. Because you have to get used to seeing yourself, hearing yourself, just getting comfortable with yourself on camera. Because other than that, if you go big at first, it's going to come across as stiff, I think, a little bit.
Completely. Yeah. And I think definitely baby steps, definitely know your limits, definitely. And if you go too big first, then you're probably not going to do it again. It's like a new habit, right? I remember I was dating this guy, and he was like talking about getting back into the gym. And he's like, "Well, I'm just going to go 5 days this week." And I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't been to the gym in months, and now you're going to go 5 days a week? Like, can we not? Like, that is not how you do it." So like, don't like be like, "And now I'm doing a video every day." Like, just don't do that. It doesn't work.
Well, yeah, I think easing into something is absolutely right. It's just like if you go
Totally.
to the gym 5 days a week. It's not good for your muscles anyway, right? I mean, that's what I've been told. So
I love
what
to
do you say-
rest.
Yes, don't we all? So what do you have to say to the woman who is just starting out and kind of worries that her story isn't really interesting enough to build a brand around?
I would say everyone probably thinks that at one point. I know I definitely have. I think that's feeling like imposter syndrome to me. If you are starting a business, you have a compelling story because it's badass to start a business. It's cool as hell. And I know that might feel like you're like, okay, sure. It's actually true. To start, like the amount of people who start businesses, like I don't know the percentages, but it's low. So to put yourself out there, to build a product, offer a service, you have a story there. What brought you to decide you want to do this? What inspired you? What do you do well? Like I think there's something there. Absolutely. Like, okay, you had an aunt back in the amount of times I've heard, I've hear these stories all the time. I talk to business owners every day, and you hear every story is different and interesting and unique. And it's unique, and you don't have to appeal to everyone. You shouldn't. In fact, you want to be more niche about who you appeal to, and think about the people you see on social media who have these, you don't need 10 million followers. You could get 100 followers of people who really support you and who really resonate with your message. And that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. I was just having a conversation this morning with my chiropractor. He said, "Oh, you still have your podcast?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to be a Joe Rogan, though. I want you to know that." And he said,
"Thank God."
Yeah, right. But, he said that, if you had a tenth of what Joe Rogan has, you'd still be successful. And I said, all I really need is my followers. That's all
Totally.
I need. It can be, I'd rather go deep than wide. And that's what you need. I mean, that's it. I think we spend a lot of time on social media trying to push and get that follower number up, but you don't need to have an ocean full of followers. You need to have some to get sales, but
Sure.
It just has to be the right followers. Love
totally.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where can people find out more about you, Cara?
So you can find me at bubblycreative.com, Bubbly Creative on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. And on Instagram, it's Bubbly Creative MA. Bubbly Creative was taken. And then Cara Chatellier on LinkedIn, and on the website, you can book time on my calendar. I'm always available to chat with anyone, any business owner. I'm pretty open as far as just having a quick conversation.
Love it. It was great chatting with you this morning, and all of those links will be in the show notes for today too. So
awesome.
All right. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate
thank you for having me. It was so lovely.
I love how Cara reminds us that personality isn't just a nice to have thing in your marketing. It really is a secret sauce. If you want to learn more about Cara or Bubbly Creative, be sure to check out the links in the show notes for today. You can find them at myweeklymarketing.com/118. And if this episode got your wheels turning about how to bring more purpose and personality into your brand, I'd love to hear from you. Tag me on Instagram at Janice Hossteger Marketing, or send me a DM. I always love hearing about what resonated with you. Until next time, keep showing up with heart and strategy, and you'll go places. See you next time. Bye for now.